right at 6 o'clock. So you guys are my guinea pigs. It's my first presentation this year, and you guys are my biggest group ever in 3 years of doing this. So, yeah, seriously, you guys are like at least twice as big as my biggest group ever. So I appreciate you all coming. I am Sarah Windmeyer, the Director of Financial Aid at Highland Community College. What I'm going to go over tonight has to do with anywhere that you're going to school. It has nothing specific to Highland. I might mention a few things that Highland does just as an example, but this is going to apply no matter where you go, even if it's like a trade school or you're going to Harvard or something. Feel free to interrupt me anytime as I'm going through this. It'll probably be like an hour presentation. I will also stick around afterwards if you have specific questions about like your situation. Do we have any like FAFSA veterans that have done FAFSAs before, like for yourself or for other kids? Did you do it in the last year? Did you have to do one last year? How'd it go for you?
Terrible.
Was it?
It was a big headache.
It was like one way or the other. Like it was either the easiest thing ever or the worst thing ever.
And the weight was really low. Like kids had to make their decision on where to go to school, and there was no awards.
We didn't start pulling in FAFSAs until middle of May, and we usually are pulling them in like November. So this year they say it's going to be open December 1st for everyone. Let's just keep our fingers crossed. They didn't change. They're not changing really anything from 24, 25. So hopefully they've got like the kinks worked out and it goes better this year for everybody.
So if they're not changing anything, basically when we did the last time, you got in there, we had our accounts and everything already set up. You kind of answered their first few questions. You just checked, hey, can we access your financial records? You say yes. Boom, boom, you're done.
If you were one of the lucky ones, yeah.
So there really is no change to anything then?
They say they're not. There's some things that we would like for them to change, but they're not doing it this year. So, as a financial aid person, they took off some stuff that we need. But so what is financial aid? Financial aid is all of the money that you pool together to help pay for post-secondary education. That could be money from grandma and grandpa. It can be money from the federal government. It can be scholarships from your school here. So it's just all of those funds pooled together to help you pay for college. So cost of attendance. So this first part is kind of just going over like in general, like kind of cost of college, general financial aid stuff, and then we'll get into the FAFSA stuff the second half. So cost of attendance is what every college has to put together for their prospective students to kind of give you an idea of what it's going to cost you to go to college for a year. So there's direct cost and indirect cost. Your direct costs are going to be what the college bills you for. So that's going to be your fees, tuition, books, housing if you're living on campus, meals if you're living on campus. Those are all direct because that's going to show up on a bill from the college. Then you've got things like transportation, miscellaneous personal. So transportation is going to be repairing your car, putting gas in your car. Can't buy a car with federal financial aid, but you can fix a car. And miscellaneous and personal, like, buying clothes, buying food, medication, things like that. Your, this one right here, like the course materials, supplies, and equipment. So like buying a computer, if there's other books you have to, like Highland has book rental, but at your school you might have to go to an outside bookstore to get those supplies, pens, papers, that kind of stuff. All of those, these bottom ones, are the indirect cost. So they're a cost you're going to incur because you're going to college and you're living for a year. So like if you're not living on campus, that's going to be your indirect cost. But it's not something the college is going to bill you for. So you're not going to get a statement saying, here's your medication amount for the year kind of thing. So every college cost of attendance is going to be different. Highland is going to be a lot different than Harvard. So when you're looking at cost of attendance, so this is what's misleading. So for transparency reasons, we have to give you an amount for all of these things. So if you look at our website for Highland's cost of attendance right now, living on campus, I think I'm around $21,000. It's nothing you're ever going to pay. You're certainly not going to pay us. But I have to show you, here's what you might have to pay for a year to go to college. What that also does, I'm very generous in that amount. Like I build it pretty big for you guys because we can give you financial aid up to that amount. If I just kept my cost of attendance at $7,000, which is what you might pay a semester for me, then you wouldn't be able to buy a computer or anything like that. I wouldn't be able to give you all of those scholarships, all of that financial aid. So when you look at any college's cost of attendance, it's going to look a lot worse than what it really is. because most financial aid, because we get to set that cost of attendance, and most of us try to be generous so people can get extra financial aid above and beyond what it's really going to cost to be there. So like I said, at Highland, mine's around $21,000. What you'll really pay if you're living on campus is maybe around $12,000. So just know that when you're looking at schools, that it can be sticker shock, and we get a lot of calls because, like I said, for transparency reasons, we have to tell you that, but then parents will call and say, when we visited, you said it was going to be $3,000 and this says $20,000. Well, that's why. Any questions about that? I just like to warn people on that one. So the next piece that will go into that cost, or go against that cost of attendance, is the Student Aid Index. So the Student Aid Index, or the SAI, is what comes out of the FAFSA. It's based on your family income and household size. And this is kind of the government's way of saying maybe this is what the family could contribute towards college. It's not a number that anyone's going to bill you for. So say, you do your FAFSA and your cost, or your SAI is $2,000. You're not going to have to pay that $2,000 to anyone. That's just the government's way of calculating, like, the family should be able to do this, so here's how much aid we're going to let them have. It affects the Pell Grant, basically. So the SAI is, like I said, it's combined the student contribution and the parent contribution. So it's not going to include like sibling income, but we still just kind of talk about it's the family's resources to help pay for college. So that SAI is going to be the same no matter where you go to college. So even if you went to Highland or you went to Harvard, your SAI is going to be the same because it's based on that same information you put on the FAFSA. Does that make sense? So then you take to come up with your financial need, you take that cost of attendance, so the one that does vary by college, and the SAI that stays the same no matter what, that gets you your financial need. So if you are a wealthy family, you might have a high SAI and have no financial need at Highland, but you go to Harvard and you have a $50,000 financial need. So that's going to vary by college because that cost of attendance varies by college. So what that financial need is used for is deciding your need-based aid and your non-need-based aid. So need-based aid means you need it. That's based on your income. It shows that there's a gap in your income that, you need help going to college. The non-need-based aid is going to be things like scholarships that, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you earned that scholarship. So when we're looking at types of financial need or financial aid, the scholarships and grants over here on the side is gift aid. So that's going to be, grants are going to be need-based. So those are going to be that's what comes out of the FAFSA. Sometimes there's state grants. Some colleges have their own institutional grants that are based on financial need. So they're going to look at that calculation and decide how much you can have. Then the scholarships up there, that's non-need based for the most part. That's going to be based on merit, like good grades. It might be based on a certain characteristic, like you're left-handed, or like your parent was in the military, or you're Native American or something like that. So it's based on some characteristic you have or a talent you have, like athletic ability. Both of those are called, the scholarships and grants are gift aid because that's money you don't have to pay back. As far as federal Pell Grants, as long as you stay in school, you don't have to pay them back. If you drop out like mid-semester, you might have to pay them back. That's just a little warning. But anyway, so that's gift aid. Then over here is the self-help aid. Some loans are need-based, some loans are non-need-based. So we'll kind of go over that in the next, I think it's the next couple slides. So self-help aid is like what it sounds like. You're going to work to earn your, pay for college, or you're going to have loans that you eventually have to pay back with interest. So that's why it's called self-help aid, because it's not just given to you. You're eventually going to have to pay that back, or you're going to have to work to earn it. So these are the 5 sources of financial aid, and we'll go over each of these. So the federal government is the largest source of financial aid. It is based primarily on financial need. That's where the Pell Grant comes from. You do have to apply every year using the FAFSA. So some people think, I did the FAFSA last year, I don't have to do it again. It's based on a different year's income. So you do have to do it every year that you're in college. And certain eligibility requirements have to be met, like you have to be a high school graduate, you have to be a U.S. citizen, and you have to be enrolled in a Title IV program. So federal financial aid is under Title IV of the law. And so you can't just be like if you came to Highland to do 2 classes to transfer somewhere else, you're not getting a degree from us, so we couldn't give you financial aid. So that's what that means about being in a Title IV program. Okay. Now we'll kind of get into the federal stuff. So the federal Pell Grant, like I said, is that comes out of the FAFSA based on your family's income and household size. That is money that shouldn't have to be paid back as long as you stay in school. You can't have a bachelor's degree yet to earn that, and the amount does vary based on that cost of attendance and that student aid index. So if you have a high student aid index, you might only get $100 of Pell. So it can vary. The Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, you'll hear your college just call it FSEOG. That is an additional grant that goes to the most needy students. You do have to be Pell eligible to receive an FSEOG grant. Different colleges give different amounts for that. We can give up to $4,000 a year, and as low as I think $100 a semester. We at Highland, we increased it to $300 per semester. I know there's some colleges that give $1,000 per semester. That FSEOG is limited to each college. So Pell Grant is not limited. Whatever, how much ever the student population qualifies for Pell Grant, that college can have. But the FSEOG is limited. Like we only get $50,000 about at Highland. So that is one reason to do your FAFSA as soon as possible, because basically it's on a first come, first serve basis, because once we've awarded that to students, we don't have any more to award. So, and that's the way every college is going to be. They're going to be, other colleges might get more overall, but they will eventually run out just like we do. So just a reason to fill out your FAFSA as soon as you can. The TEACH grant is specific for people going into the education field. It does have a lot of stipulations on it. One of your handouts is the Federal Student Aid Program Summary. This goes over all of these things in more detail and tells you the limits and the requirements and things like that. I give that out because we're not going to do that much detail tonight. Federal Work Study is where you can have a job on campus. Most campuses, I believe, do pay it like a paycheck. We do at Highland, so it's just like any other job. You get a paycheck, go blow it however you want. It doesn't go towards your account or anything like that. So that's Federal Work Study. You do have to qualify, so you do have to have need, still have financial need to qualify for Federal Work Study. Then we get into the loans. So the federal direct loans, those are student loans in the student name that the student will eventually have to pay back. Parents can pay it back for them if they want, but it's going to be in the student's name on the student's credit. There's 2 different kinds of federal loans. There's a subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized is need-based, and the government pays your interest while you're in college. So basically no interest accrues on that subsidized loan while a student is still in college. So if you would pay that loan off while you're in college, you'd never pay more than you borrowed. Then there's the unsubsidized loan. That is not need-based, so anybody can have the maximum of that one. That one, the government does not pay the interest for you, so as soon as it's dispersed or taken down from the government, it starts adding interest immediately. So you've got, I call them the friendly and the unfriendly loans. So your college is always going to take a subsidized loan for you first, but we have limits, again, on that sheet of how much we can give of each based on your situation. I'll talk about that at the end. Okay, and then the Federal Direct Plus loans, that's where that's a parent taking it out. That's called a Parent Plus loan. So if there's not enough student loans, or we have parents that say, I don't want any loans in my student's name, so I'll do the Parent Plus loan. That one's going to have a higher interest rate than the student loans, and I believe it's 60 days that the parent has to start paying that back, but I think they can file for a deferment. But that would be a way to go. And the Parent Plus loan can go up to the cost of attendance. So the student loans are limited, like a first-year student can only have $5,500 first year of college. That's it for the entire year. It's $5,500. But with my cost of attendance at $20,000, if the student borrowed the $5,500, then that parent can borrow $14,500 if they want to. Does that make sense to everybody? And we do have parents do that. I had one parent do it. I think she didn't understand. I tried to explain her son did not need a $14,000 refund, but he's getting one. We do try as financial aid people to kind of counsel people so they don't end up in debt, but some people just don't understand, or they see those dollar signs and they want it in their pocket. So, okay, so then moving on to states. Most states, there are residency requirements to live in the state for a certain number of years to qualify. I think we have one in Kansas that is not residency based. It can be based on merit, so like good grades, or it can be based on that financial need. States do use the information from the FAFSA, and they have deadlines, different deadlines for the FAFSA. Kansas deadline is April 1st for priority for KBOR scholarships, Kansas Board of Regents scholarships. So at the bottom of this slide, I did give a direct link to the Kansas Board of Regents scholarships. I know there's like a Kansas Scholar one, there is a nursing, there's National Guard, there used to be a minority one, they got rid of that one. There's several out there, so it's worth looking at to apply for those, because I know this year I've gotten 2 emails for 4 different students that they've got one of the scholarships that they have money that they can't even give away, so they're emailing me and saying, hey, this person's supposed to be in your program, are they enrolled, because I'm going to give them $1,000. So apply for Kansas scholarships. The money just sits there if it doesn't get used. Okay, so the individual colleges and universities offer scholarships, so it can be based on both merit or financial need or athletic ability. It can be gift aid or self-help aid. So some colleges will do loan programs like within the college, like Harvard will loan you. Sorry, I keep using Harvard, but that's just easy. But they have loans within the institution that they can do for you. At Highland, we can't afford to do that. But we do offer gift aid for academics and athletics. Some of those institutions will use your FAFSA. Highland does not. We don't care. We just give away scholarships like they're candy. And deadlines and application requirements can vary greatly. At Highland, our deadline for the fall is June 1st. Some colleges might be a lot earlier, like they might be March or April. And some colleges have early FAFSA deadlines. So if you're thinking, of where you want to go right now, then be checking those deadlines so you're sure that you meet their FAFSA deadline, priority deadline, and their scholarship deadline. And then I just gave the link to Highland's scholarship webpage if you're interested in Highland. But definitely be looking on your, even if you're looking at 10 different colleges, be checking those out to make sure you don't miss a deadline. Okay, so private sources is another place to get scholarships and grants. Could be foundations, businesses, churches, basically any organization you or your parents or maybe your grandparents have ever been a member of. Check if there's a scholarship for you. Boy Scouts have them, local churches have them, things like that. Never hurts to ask. And there are tons of scholarships out online as well. On our Highland scholarships page on that last slide, I do have resources at the bottom of that page, several outside resources that we're not affiliated with, but scholarship websites that you can trust that aren't scams. If you're applying for scholarships online and they ever want an application fee, do not do it. That's going to be a scam. Every scholarship should be a free application. And this is another place, begin researching early, because some of those deadlines, I know my son was a Boy Scout and the deadline was like November before he graduated. So start looking for, and if you have like juniors, start looking for scholarships now. Not that my own son did that, but not even the older one, the one that's a senior now, didn't do that either. Okay, so employers are also a good source for scholarships. They may have like a reimbursement program, or some other kind of educational benefits for employees or their children. So check into that. Okay, any questions on that in general, kind of about financial aid scholarships? Am I going too fast or anything, or are we good? Okay. Okay, so moving on to the lovely FAFSA. So FAFSA stands for Free Application of Federal Student Aid. So again, if you find a website that's trying to charge you to fill out the FAFSA, you're not on the right website. It is studentaid.gov. You'll see that on all of our material, and I have several links in here, but just make sure you are not paying to do the application or the FAFSA. Okay, so what it does is collect that demographic and financial information about your family. They use that information to calculate that student aid index so they can figure out your need. Colleges will use that to award your financial aid. Typically, it's open on October 1st. This year they're saying December 1st. Hopefully that's true. And hopefully next year it's October 1st again. And I mean, there'll be a lot of communication coming out when it does open. They're opening it soft right now with certain colleges and certain people to test it. And as I said, when we were talking about colleges, some colleges do set FAFSA priority deadlines, so be checking into that so you don't miss one of those. Okay. All right, so there's the online FAFSA, of course, and there is a paper FAFSA. The paper one is 22 pages long with 14 pages of entry. I don't recommend doing it before the FAFSA mess of last year. We used to say it took 6 to 8 weeks to process. This past year, if you did the paper FAFSA in January, they did not even start looking at them until August. So please do not do a paper FAFSA. For one thing, it's easier online. We'll go through that, but find someone who has a computer, come here to this library somewhere, find a way to do it online. You can do it on your phone. It's probably a little easier to do online, on a computer. Okay, so the benefits of using it online is it does have built-in edits, so and skip logic. So like when you answer a question a certain way, it's going to skip the answers that don't apply to you. That's amazing because I was going through the paper FAFSA getting ready for this, and it was like I can see how people would get confused because that paper one you can't just skip on your own, and they put it's like this big that says if this doesn't apply to you, skip this question and go here. So. And it does work. I did a FAFSA this year because I'm getting a master's degree. I didn't really want financial aid, but I just wanted to see what it was like. And it did do that. Like when I said that, I wasn't military or whatever, it, skipped the rest of it. You also won't have to manually enter you shouldn't, we'll go over that, have to enter your federal tax information. It is more timely, hopefully this year if they're on top of it. It'll take just 2 to 3 business days to get to your colleges. And there are more detailed instructions, and there's little help prompts and things like that that kind of explain to you what they're asking for in those questions. You can then also go back in and check the status of your application online, and it's simplified in future years because your demographic information is already going to be there. So you won't have to enter all of that stuff again. You'll just basically, like for you, you're just going to be in you'll just be basically updating your financial information. Because everything, unless you've moved or something like that. And then for your other kids, I'm assuming, do you have a new student this year that's going into college?
Yes, I've got a senior in college leaving here in May, and then obviously my senior of high school coming in after that.
Yeah, so your younger child will have to put in all their information this year, but yours should already be there for him, right. Him or her. Yeah. Yep, okay. All right, so the first step is to create your FSA ID. So what that is your federal student aid account. This is what you're going to use to log into the FAFSA. You can use that for years and years and years. Students, you can use that to log in to do a FAFSA for your own students if they're still doing this. I know when I log in now, I went to college when you had to do it on paper and we didn't have computers, what was that, Oregon Trail? That's where I'm from. I'm from the Oregon Trail age. But when I created my federal student aid ID to do my son's FAFSA, I could see the financial aid that I got when I was in college. As long as you got financial aid, I think it's since 1984, or is it 94? It's in federal student aid account. So make that FSA ID with an email address that you have access to, that you will always have access to. So don't use your high school. Don't use an employer in case you leave there. Make sure that it's a personal email address so you can always recover it if you forget what it is. But try to write it down somewhere safe. I had a counselor say she put it in the notes in her phone. Don't do that just in case you lose your phone because people are going to have access to a lot of stuff on you. But it is something that you want to keep track of so you can use it over and over again. Parents will use it for all of your children. You can use the same one. You'll be able to log in and see both of your kids' FAFSAs there. Let's see. And only the owner should create the FSA ID. So there's a lot of kids that come in my office and log in as their parents, and I pretend I don't see. Because when you're signing the FAFSA, that's a legal binding signature. So that's why student and parent need to have their own FSA ID and not share that with each other. You do need to do this to fill out and create your FSA ID 2 to 3 days before you're going to do the FAFSA, because they verify your identity through the Social Security Administration. So don't think that you can create the ID and immediately start the FAFSA. You can try that and it'll be a mess. It locked some people out this year. So just make sure if you don't have one set up yet, set that up, wait 2 to 3 business days, and then go in to do the FAFSA. And right on the bottom of that slide was the address to the correct student aid. So who needs a FAFSA ID? Student obviously will always need one because you're filling that out for yourself. Parents, it depends. So one parent needs a federal student aid account if you filed your 2023 taxes as married filing jointly and you're still married to that same person. If this is your situation, then hunky-dory, it's going to be easy. If parents are filed their taxes separately, both parents will have to have an FSA ID because you're giving the IRS permission and transferring your data, and you can't give permission for your spouse for that data to come in. So if you do married filing separately, you'll both need an FSA ID. If parents are not married but they're living together, they will both need an FSA ID because obviously, again, you've got 2 different tax returns. And then one parent, of course, if the parent is single, not divorced or separated, might be widowed, something like that, just one parent needs it. And I can stay afterwards if you have a weird situation, because this is where it gets weird. So which parent to include? So again, if you're married, like you're the biological parents of your child and you're still married and you did a married filing jointly, your FAFSA is going to be cake. If you are in or if you're unmarried but living together, but it's both biological parents. If you've got a divorced or separated situation, the parent who provides the most financial support is the one who's supposed to be doing the FAFSA. Doesn't matter where the child lives, it's whoever's doing the most giving the most financial support. And if child support is paid, it's the parent paying the child support that gets to count that as the support being paid. Does that make sense? I don't even know if we have these situations, but these come up. So it's going to be the parent who provides the most support. Okay, let's go to this one. So if a parent is remarried, so the parent that provides the most support is remarried, they're going to have to include their new spouse on the FAFSA. That new spouse's income is going to have to be on the FAFSA. And then, of course, a single parent, not divorced or separated, is going to be the parent on the FAFSA. When you're looking at a parent, like divorced parents, figuring out who provides the most support, say they're both remarried, when you're looking at who provides the most support, you're only looking at the biological parent. So if my husband and I are divorced, I only look at his income to see who provides the most support. But then when you fill out the FAFSA, he's going to have to put his income and his spouse's income. So you just don't include the new spouse's income when you're figuring out who provides the most support. By the way, this was called FAFSA simplification. And no one's auditing this, just to let you know. We have kids come in our office and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that wasn't Mom I just heard on the phone with this kind of voice. No one, I don't know of anyone that's going to come out and say, no, I know that he provides more support than she does. So this is what it's supposed to be. I'm telling you what it's supposed to be is whoever provides the most financial support. Okay. And again, I'll say after if you've got a situation you're not sure of. Okay. So, online FAFSA, when you log in, this is the screen you see. 2526 isn't open yet, but it will be. When you go in, when it's open, you will see both forms here. Make sure you're doing 2526. The only exception is, are any kids thinking about summer school this coming summer? The only thing with summer is schools can be a header or a trailer. So Highland is a header, so our summer goes on 2526. If your school is a trailer, their summer goes on 24-25. So if you do summer, you might have to do both FAFSAs for the next school year. Okay, so just make sure you're picking the right one. Talked about summer. Okay. All right, then when you go in there, you're going to put whether you're the student or the parent. This is where, in past years, we've had a lot of trouble because a parent will log in as the student and put their own information in. I think the way the FAFSA is set up now has kind of solved that. Because we'll get like student and parent both made $100,000 and they're both divorced, and we're like, is this student divorced and made 100, like the exact same income and taxes and everything? And I loved it when mom was like, I didn't do that. And I'm like, yes, you did. No, I didn't. I'm like, okay. I know when I'm being lied to. But yeah, I think now it's a little harder to do with the questions that they ask. Hopefully you'll catch that you're on there as the wrong thing, but just make sure you pick the right one when you go in as yourself. Okay. So, talking about the federal tax information, we call it the FADDX. This is where you're giving permission for the IRS to pull that data into the FAFSA. You have to give consent for the IRS to pull in your data. It'll be from 2023. Even if you did not file a tax return, you still have to give consent. It won't pull in a tax return. It will show us no return found. It'll show that you gave permission and no return found. Everything's good. If you do not give consent, the student will not be eligible for any federal aid. So if you know someone who's thinking of, I'm not going to give consent, then the student's going to get nothing. And we do have parents do that. Please don't do that to your student. You're only hurting your student. They will not see your income. You will not see your income. Because it's all blacked out when it does transfer in. So no one's going to be able to see that. So most of your income information will come in based on your tax return. So that eliminates a lot of the manual entry. Any questions about that? And you can't change any of that income data once it comes in. Okay, so there are some situations where you might have to manually enter your financial information. So like if you were married filing jointly, now you're divorced or single or even remarried, you have to give consent to the IRS. It's going to bring in your 23 joint tax return, and then you can say that you're not married to that person anymore, and then manually enter your information. That's mainly the only situation. The only other one would be like if you were single then and you're married now, your spouse will have to set up your new spouse will set up an FSA ID and fill in their, they'll give consent, so you still shouldn't have to manually enter. So it's really on a very limited basis that you should have to manually enter your information. It could be because you haven't filed taxes yet for 2023, but plan to, but your student cannot get financial aid until you file those taxes. And just FYI, they were due last October, or they were due right now. So if you haven't filed them yet, file them. You have till October 15th. That's your extension deadline. And we do have parents that haven't filed from that long ago, and I'm like, okay. Anyway. But yes, your student can't get financial aid until you file that tax return. And we do have parents that refuse to file their tax returns, then your student's going to get nothing. Or if you're a victim of identity theft or you filed a non-U.S. tax return is where you will have to manually enter. The stories I could tell you guys of what we hear from kids and parents. Okay, so once you get in there, students are going to answer all of this information. So of course their identity and contact information, give that consent to transfer in their data, even if there's nothing there for a tax return. This is the student's marital status as of the day you're filling out the FAFSA. The college plans, you're saying if you're going to go to like a 2-year, a 4-year private, that's all that question is. Personal and usual circumstances, which we'll go over later. Demographic information, so that's going to be like gender, race, things like that. You do not have to answer those. That's completely, and colleges don't get access to that either if you do answer them. Your citizenship status, your state of legal residence, your parents' education status. So you're just marking each of your parents, did they stop at a middle school education or get a master's degree? And it does still have middle school on there. Whether or not your parent was killed in the line of duty, that's just yes or no. And then your high school information, that's just putting in the high school that you're graduating from. So my tip is answer every single question on the FAFSA, even if it does not apply. There should be a does not apply, or like on the demographic, it says prefer not to answer. If it's a number question, like financial information, then put a 0. But answer every single question on there, because otherwise we're going to have to ask questions, or it's going to screw up, or it's going to put you on hold. So answer every question no matter what. There should be a way that you can say that it doesn't apply to you. Okay, so the dependency status, this is that personal circumstances one. So it's going to ask the student some dependency questions. If the student answers no to all of those questions, they are a dependent and will have to add parents. So the only way a student's going to answer yes is if they were born before January 1st of '02, if the student is married, if they're a graduate or professional student, a veteran, a member of the U.S. Armed Forces, an orphan, ward of the court, was in legal guardianship, was in foster care after the age of 13, has legal dependents other than a spouse, so like if they have a child that they're supporting, if they're an emancipated minor or homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. So that is the only way that a student under 24, those items are the only way a student under 24 is independent. Coming to the school and saying, I stopped supporting her 2 years ago, she's paying for everything, government doesn't care. If she's still, you haven't emancipated her, she's not in legal guardianship under the court or anything like that, they're a dependent. I have my own issues with that because my son is now, he's almost 24, but he bought a house and was married and everything at 23. And it's like, if he hadn't been married, I would have to be on his FAFSA even though he makes more money than me. Anyway, there's a lot of people already out of college at 24, but that's what it is. So we do have a lot of people try to argue with us on that, but if you're under 24, for some reason on the FAFSA, they say you are a dependent. So there is an option, this question, which a lot of people are answering wrong, is they're asking the student if they want unsubsidized loans only. So that's the one that will add interest immediately when we disperse it. It's the unfriendly one. When students say that, then the FAFSA is like, okay, they're not going to put parents on here. So that's all they're going to get, and then you're going to have to explain everything to me or go fix it. If you want any kind of aid besides those ugly loans, then you want to say no to this question. There's something about the way it's worded that I don't know if people aren't paying attention or it's the way it's worded, but we're getting a lot of those in, and then you've got to go back in and change that and then add parents, and it just adds a lot of time to it. So that's one of the things we were hoping they would change this year, is somehow word that differently, flag it differently, something so people understand better. Okay. So besides those things that I just said is the only way kids can be independent, there's exceptions, of course. So unusual circumstances is where we can change a student's dependency status. So say they don't qualify for any of those dependency questions that are automatically on there. That student will work directly with their college. So they can mark with those questions, then they can mark that I think something about not providing parent information or provisionally independent. Then they will work with their financial aid office at the college they're going to go to and explain their situation. So the homeless question that was on the last one, they have to be deemed homeless like by a high school, by a homeless shelter, something like that. We do get a lot of kids in our office that don't have that situation. Like maybe they've been homeless since high school, so they don't, they're just living on friends' couches. There's nothing officially has been done. We can work with that student, like we get a statement from them, we might get a statement of where they've been staying, maybe their pastor, something like that, and then we can deem them independent. So if your student is independent because of some kind of situation like abuse from parents, abandonment from parents, things like that, the financial aid office can work with them. It is the financial aid officer's decision, so they have to work with the college they're going to go to. So if they're not going to come to Highland, don't come talk to me about it, because where you go, they might not agree with my decision. Hopefully you don't have kids in that situation, but it does happen. I know we had a student that his mom died while he was in high school and his dad's been in prison. So we did what we could to make him an independent so he can get financial aid. And again, I'll stay afterwards if anybody has any kind of situation like that. Yep.
So they need to fill out the FAFSA to their best of ability, then get a response, then contact their college.
Yes. So circumstances that are not unusual that we can override and make them an independent if parents are just refusing to do the FAFSA. If parents are just refusing to do it, then they have to, if the parent will, the parent can sign a form with your financial aid office that says, I'm refusing to do the FAFSA, and then we can give the students the unsubsidized loans, the unfriendly ones, but at least they get something. But parents refusing to contribute or not do the FAFSA, or they say they don't claim the student on their tax return, or they're not paying for anything, those are not unusual circumstances just because your parent's a butthole. Okay. And I do have a student like that right now. I'm like, will your dad at least sign that he refuses to do the FAFSA? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay. Parent of the year right there. Okay. Okay, so then getting to the student financial information, again, they acknowledge, they let the IRS bring in their tax data. So really the only thing they've got to answer is their asset information. This is things like your cash and savings accounts. Any of this asset information is the day you fill out the FAFSA. So if grandma wants to give you $10,000, tell her to wait till tomorrow. And again, there's no one auditing this. I'm just telling you what you need to do. Net worth of business and investment farms, net worth of investments, including real estate, but not your primary residence. So most of the time students don't have that, but they might have a little bit of savings or something like that. So you report that as part of your assets. If a student didn't file a tax return, but they worked, they don't put anywhere in there what their earned income was. They used to, not anymore. You just report what you filed in a tax return. If you weren't required to file, you don't report any income information. Okay, then the student can do their college selection. So on the FAFSA online, you can enter up to 20 colleges. So your FAFSA is going to go to all 20 of those schools. Just warning you, you're going to get inundated with information, so you might want to narrow it down from 20, or keep your options open and send all 20. You can search by state and then the college name, or if you know the college's code, you can put in, it's a 6-digit code, you can put in that, but searching by state usually works pretty well. And then the student just looks over their information and signs. So you'll see right here, this is the parents that the student had to enter. They had to enter some information earlier. Now the student's going to send their parent an invitation. So it's best, the FAFSA works best if the student does their part first and then sends the parent the invitation. And make sure you've got your FAFSA ID set up before they send that invitation. So student is done with their part. When they hit submit, it'll send an email to the parent. What the student needs to submit or to send that is a social security number, parent's name, date of birth, and an email address. And then it will send an email to the parent. Parents will have a link that invites them to the FAFSA. It's very exciting. You get an invitation to a big old party. Okay, so then you will go out to studentaid.gov to fill out your part of the FAFSA. Okay. And it'll I think it asks you, and I'm not sure if it's on that screen or the next screen. If you've got more than one student, you'll see both students there. Okay, so parent's going to enter basically a lot of the same information as the student. Your identity information, giving consent to the IRS, your marital status as of the day you're filling out the FAFSA, so don't do it what your tax return was, like if it's changed. Your marital status as of the day you're filling out the FAFSA, your state of legal residence, whether or not you've gotten means tested federal benefits in the previous 2 years. That's things like WIC, SNAP, Medicaid and Social Security income. Okay, and then tax filing status, family size and number in college. So the family size is going to come in from the IRS. You're not going to be able to see what it is, but it will ask you if you need to change it. So I would have your tax return there. In case you forgot that you had a baby since 2023, you'll want to increase your family size, or you forgot that, one kid moved out. Because I know, who knows? And if you've got foster kids coming in and out of your house, then you may not remember who was there and on the tax return. So have your tax return there just to make sure that your family size is still the same. If it's different from the 23 tax return, you can update it. You answer the number in college, although it doesn't go into the calculation. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Do we include our seniors as being in college since we're applying for them for college?
No.
So just.
Oh, yes. Sorry, yes.
So it's not as of the date of the application?
No, that one's not. That's a really good question because I don't think that's actually said anywhere.
And so it's who lives with you? Family size is who lives with you? Even
It's.
if you have kids that are attending college, what is the family size?
We'll go over that on another slide. Good question. Let's see, again, minimal information should have to be answered if your stuff came from the IRS. So earlier I said, the child support is counted by the parent who pays it as far as deciding support for the child. But then the parent who receives it, if they're the one on the FAFSA, then they have to report how much child support was received. Here's another place that I know is going to be screwed up with people. So it's the latest completed calendar year is the child support received you're supposed to report. So if you're filling out the FAFSA today, you're going to report 2023 child support received. If you fill the FAFSA out in January, you're going to report 2024 child support received because that's the latest completed year. Maybe there's not a big difference for people, but if you're like, in an arguing situation, there might be. Again, I think that's going to be an answer that's probably going to be wrong on a lot of people, but I'm telling you what to do. I don't make the rules. Okay, so then asset information again, so you're checking, savings. Net worth of business and investment farms, investments, real estate, that again is going to be the value as of the day you're filling out the FAFSA. This is another area that I like to say no one is going to audit you. So if you have a farm, no one's going to come out and say you only reported 2 cattle and I see 200. No one's telling you how to value your business or farm. So it's completely up to you to come up with that amount if you're in that situation. If you have a farm, but it's a corporation, you would own stock in that farm. You should report the value of that. Again, no one's auditing this, so I don't know. I probably shouldn't be recording this since I keep saying that. For being in financial aid, I'm not a fan of financial aid. There's just too much room for fraud in this stuff. They just don't think things through. But anyway, I don't have the solution either. And then they might have to enter other parent information, meaning the second parent, you would just enter like their name, address, things like that. And the family's primary residence is never reported as part of your assets. So like if you have a farm and it's on, your home is on that land, you would never put the value of your primary residence of your home on that value.
I have a question again.
Yep.
I'm going to ask all the questions.
That's fine.
So, for farming families, their farms will end up counting against them because they own land that helps them run their business. That was the new thing that came out last week, right?
So what it still says in the law is investment farms. So it was funny, at one of our conferences this spring, we had someone on Zoom and they couldn't get it to work. So the woman in the room said her thoughts, and then the woman on Zoom said her thoughts. Because this is another issue with federal financial aid, is we have all kinds of rules, but it's also like, what do you think it means? So since the law actually says investment farms, I'm going to go with my friend Brenda, who said, if you're operating that farm yourself, that's not an investment. Like, you're running it. You're out there in the combine harvesting. That's not an investment farm, so she would not include it on there. She counts an investment farm like, say you own farmland with your brother. He does all the work. You just might write a check for conservation work once a year. It's an investment for you, but not for him who's working it.
So if you were buying land to go hunting, that would be maybe an investment farm. But as something that you are farming, no.
That's the way I would look at it.
Okay, good to know.
And that's one thing that many organizations ask them to clarify. Like, if you want us to report all farms, then take out the word investment. And they didn't, so I'm going with that one. I'm going to ignore my friend Denise, who says you have to put on all farms, and I'm going to go with my friend Brenda. Those are real people, by the way. I'm not making them names. Okay, so the parent gets to the end of theirs. They can review, sign, and submit the FAFSA. I don't know how this is happening. We're seeing a lot of people not signing the FAFSA. I think it's just a checkbox. So make sure you're clicking the checkbox before you click submit. Because it will come to us, but then it'll say, you didn't sign. It won't show us income. It won't give you an SAI. It's not complete unless you sign it. So make sure, pay attention to that. Okay, now we're going to get into who's in your family. So for dependent students, which I'm assuming most of you are, the student, obviously, the parents, and the parents' other dependent children, even if they live apart because of college. So I know I have a family that they now have 2 in college, 2 in high school. They'll be able to count all 4 of them because they're still supporting them. There is a typo in the handouts, and I didn't get it fixed on this one. It's supposed to be if you're going to provide more than half of their support in the coming school year. So it would be 25-26. So like say you've got a grandchild living with you or maybe a grandparent living with you, and you're going to be providing more than half of their support like your parents are as a student, then you would be able to include them in your family size. Even if they're not in your tax return, you would be able to include them in your family size, as long as you are going to keep supporting them. So like it says other people that live with the parents, so that's basically anybody that you're taking care of. And I had someone ask me last year, they've got grandma and grandpa live in a different house on the land. And I would count them because they're not paying the property taxes, they're not paying the utilities, any of that stuff. So I said I would count, they're not paying rent to them. So I said I would count them that you're supporting them then. You know, if they're only getting $10,000 in Social Security a year, they're probably not supporting themselves. As an independent student, of course, it would be just the student spouse if they're married. And if the student is supporting another child or someone else, then they could include them. Does that answer your questions on that one? So yeah, even if they're living apart, if they're still supporting them, you know, just living apart for college, then they can count them. Okay, so what happens once it gets submitted? So it comes to us in what we call an ISER, that Institutional Student Information Record. FPS means FAFSA Processing System. So it's going to go through their system, it's going to send us the ISER, it's going to send the student a FAFSA submission summary. What it's actually going to do is send the student an email, and then they log back in to see their FAFSA submission summary. So the student is going to see kind of their eligibility, meaning that it'll show that SAI. If you signed and submitted and did everything that you should, it's going to show what the answers were. It's going to show what schools you sent it to, and then it's going to tell you like your next steps. For us, it's going to show us the SAI and all that other good stuff, and show us if there's anything else that we need to collect from you. So sometimes the Department of Ed will randomly select students for verification. That just means we're going to have to, now that, you know, if your federal tax information came in, basically we're going to verify your family size. That's about it. But you will have to fill out some forms for us if you're flagged for verification. Or if something else is, you know, funny on your FAFSA, or you might get some other flag on there, like if you didn't enter your Social Security number right or something like that. So we'll work with you to help solve that. Like I said, if everything's working how it should get to your school within 2 to 3 business days, so should have a pretty quick turnaround. If you know that you made a mistake on your FAFSA, you can log back in and fix it. You can update the FAFSA submission summary that was email, you know, that you can print out, but I wouldn't do that because, again, I don't know how many weeks it's going to take for them to do it. Or you can submit documentation to your financial aid office. If you're kind of already working with your financial aid office or they've already sent you some information, I would just work with your financial aid office because we can go on the backside and enter it and everything should work right. Sometimes when a contributor, like a student or a parent, tries to go in, then something else happens that then there's more flags on the account when it comes back. So sometimes it's easier to just work with your financial aid office, especially if you already know, like you're already doing verification or something like that. Definitely work with your financial aid office. And you will get notified of verification because your financial aid office will send a letter saying that. Yeah.
So if you send this to 3 or 4 colleges and you work with one specific financial aid office, will they fix it for everyone to see?
It will change it, but the other offices might still ask. Because it'll be like, why did you make this change? Yeah. That's why I think it might be easier to do it on your own until you're narrowed down to a school. Now that federal tax information comes in, there's not a whole lot you can change. So, unless it's family size, which I don't know if they let you change that. I don't think they do. Because a lot of students had a flag on their account this year that the family size was blank and they was telling them to go back in and fix it and they literally couldn't. Like, it was completely grayed out. I'm trying to think what else. An address, you could go in and change your address. If you did get your name wrong, like when you set up your FSA ID, like some people, forget that they didn't change their actual social security card to like a married name or something, you go into your FSA ID first to change it, and then you can go into the FAFSA to change it. That is one thing we cannot change, is your name. But really, hopefully you don't run into those situations. Like I said, there's not a whole lot to mess up these days. Okay. So, special circumstances. And again, these are things that I can say afterwards if we need to talk about. So these are things that it's not dependency. This is more like income based for the most part. So this is based, again, this FAFSA is on 2023. So we're talking, a year ago as of right now. So a lot of things might have changed. You might have had a parent lose their job. You might have had your parents get divorced. Maybe parents, adopted a special needs child, something like that. Some big change since 2023. We as financial aid people, again, this is going to be per college, per financial aid office. We can make adjustments for you. So I've had students that, I did have a student this summer that his mom passed away. Well, then I'm not going to include her income on his FAFSA anymore, because obviously that doesn't exist anymore. So since 2023 is what's reported, we can make changes to what your situation is now. So if you've had a drastic change, I've had parents that lose jobs, like, they were making $150,000 and now they're making $20,000. So we just get proof of their income, maybe a written statement of what happened, proof that they got laid off, something like that. And then I can adjust their FAFSA down to the $20,000 and get that student more financial aid. So if you have any kind of situation like these, the unusual uncovered medical and dental expenses, that one's a little hard to do because it has to be the expenses after insurance, and it has to be more than 10% of your income. So we don't run into those very often. I am working with a mom right now who has, a single parent with cancer, so we're trying to work on that and see if we can help her out. Secondary school tuition. So if you've got a different or another student that's still like, I'm from Highland, so like Mar Hill Mount Academy, and Atchison is a private school, that you pay to go to school to, we can adjust your income for that tuition to that school. So those are just kind of some of the things that we can do to help a student, that they've got a very different situation than what they had in 2023. And I think that's basically what this slide goes over. So like I said, it is based on, or it's a decision by the financial aid office of the school you're going to. Decisions are final. You can't not like my answer and go to Department of Ed. I mean, you can try. They're going to say, I don't care. You can go to my boss. But Department of Ed is, because they leave it up to us. Like I said, we have a lot of leeway in financial aid along with a lot of laws. So that is one that I would definitely know what school you're going to go to. If for some reason that person doesn't help you, then maybe you want to change schools. But I know I had a student 2 years ago now that his parents had kind of just abandoned him. Normally we want to look at least 6 months of this situation. Like if you lose your job yesterday, I'm not just going to take your word for it. We've got to have documentation. That's the big thing with what we do. We have a lot of leeway, but we have to have documentation. So like if you just lost your job or something like that, we might have to wait a little longer to make those kind of adjustments. So I told him his next school might be able to, but enough time had not passed for me to be able to do that for him. Okay. Beyond financial aid, or actually like the federal part and all that, I wanted to just point out some things that students need to be aware of. So satisfactory academic progress, you will always hear it called SAP because it's too hard to say the rest of it. Every school that has federal financial aid has to measure SAP at the end of each payment period, which basically is the end of each semester. So the federal minimum is a cumulative 2.0 GPA. That means overall, once you have entered college, your overall GPA has to be a 2.0, and your completion rate has to be 66 point, it's actually like 6666667. I just made my policy this. So what that completion rate means is of the classes you attempted, you have to pass at least 67%. So if you took 12 and you only passed 6, that's a 50% completion, you're not meeting SAP. So what happens is you could lose financial aid in a future period. So a lot of schools, I know I allow a warning semester. Schools don't have to. But I allow a warning semester. So if you didn't do well in the fall, I'm going to give you a warning for spring, so you get financial aid another semester. But if you totally tank spring, then you're not going to get financial aid the next semester. You can appeal one time, at least at Highland. Again, that's up to the school whether or not you can appeal. I let you appeal, but you have to explain your extenuating circumstances. So you have to tell me what was beyond your control that caused you to fail.
And also, just learned this today, withdraw from a class. If you right now were failing something, like one of your online classes, your college algebra, your advanced comp, whatever, and you try to withdraw from your class right now so that that doesn't go on your college transcript, that counts towards your completion rate. So even though you're in high school right now, you guys are taking college classes. Same, it kind of follows you all the way through college. So just learning about W's and what they mean actually. So that's good information to keep in your head too.
Yes.
If you are taking some class in college like chemistry, you're like, this is way too hard, and you withdraw from the class, that counts towards your completion rate.
Yes, so it does start when you're in high school. I have to look at high school students even though they don't get financial aid. Some schools don't look at high school students, but I do because I don't want you to be financial aid ineligible when you get to Highland. So I will let you know you're financial aid ineligible. You can go to another school, it won't follow you there. So with W's, because I had to learn this when I started this job, because I was like, what's a drop, what's a W, I don't get it. So there's a period at every school where you can drop. So a drop is not going to show up anywhere. It's not going to be on your transcript. There's not going to be a grade, there's not going to be a W. That class won't appear anywhere. No one will ever know that you ever were in it. That's usually just like a week or two, maybe 3 at some schools. A W is a withdrawal. That means you stayed past the drop date. So now you're getting a W, which doesn't affect your GPA, but it does affect your completion rate. So if you are, like you get halfway through the semester and you're like, this is bad, like I have an F, there's no way I'm bringing this up. It is better to withdraw and only affect your completion rate than to earn an F and affect your GPA. Yeah.
Completion rate based on the number of classes, the number of hours.
The number of credit hours they have taken. So like I do have students, even at Donovan West where my son is and right there in Highland, they'll take one college algebra class, they withdraw. I'm like, well, now they have a 0 completion rate because they withdrew from the only class they were in. So I do have students that will, think they're going to come to Highland and I'm like, you withdrew from classes 2 semesters in a row, now you're ineligible. And like I said, that's why I let students know in high school, because most of the time, most schools they won't transfer in a W for sure. A lot of schools don't transfer in Fs. So that's why it's not going to follow you if you go to another school. So you're concurrent with us, right? So yeah, so if you withdrew from 2 semesters in a row, you're financially ineligible with me, but if you go to Washburn or anywhere else, you're going to be fine with them. And we will tell students that, like, if you want to go somewhere else for a semester, get your GPA up, you can come back to us and finish your degree. You just can't have financial aid from us in that meantime. Because like I said, when you do the appeal, I try to be lenient on my appeals, but I also have to have that documentation. It has to be extenuating circumstances. I had a student that just said, I really need this money. So tell me tell me what made you fail and what you're going to do different, and how you're going to succeed this time. And her thing was, I really need the money for classes. Well, I had another student who was very honest and he said, I didn't go to classes. I'm like, well, you can control that. So I have to deny you. But if you've had, we had one that his cousin was killed in an accident, and he had to fly home to Florida. It's like, show me the newspaper article. He came and talked to us before he left. He came and talked to the vice president of student affairs, explained what was going on. Okay, that's fine. Like, I know, obviously you need to deal with that. We've had, grandmas pass away or grandma's sick or family member get sick. So, like I said, we try to help. Colleges will all try to help as much as we can, but what we love to say is you can't help those who can't help themselves. So you've got to do the work as students for us to be able to help you. Okay. Kansas Promise is a program limited to Kansas, obviously. It's mostly technical colleges, but what this is a scholarship that will pay for everything but housing and meals. So like at Highland, and this is the link directly to the Kansas Promise page on Kansas Board of Regents website, and it will give you every college in Kansas that has that is Kansas Promise eligible and every program at those schools. And there's a lot of programs that you wouldn't think are part of them. But like our diesel tech program, we'll pay for their $10,000, $20,000 worth of tools. Kansas Promise will pay for that. There are income limitations, so you do have to do the FAFSA. The only other limitations it has is you have to work in Kansas for 2 years after you complete your degree. But they don't say how long and they don't say where. So you could pass our diesel tech program, have all of your tools paid for, and work in Kansas at Sonic on January 1st each year of the next 2 years, and you would qualify. Again, I'm not telling you this, but I'm telling you this. Because I reached out to them because we had a student who was in I think he was in our auto tech program, and then he decided he wanted to be an EMT, which is also one of our Kansas Promise programs. But they were like, is he going to have to pay that back? And so I reached out to Kansas Board of Regents, and they're like, we really have no way of tracking this. Because you could be auto tech and then work at Walmart, in the automotive department. They don't know if you're in the automotive department or a checker. So just know that you are supposed to work in Kansas for 2 years, but as long as you have 1 day of each of those 2 years, then the employer will sign off that you worked in Kansas. You're good to go. So it is limited to 20,000 total. And you have to complete your program in 30 months. But you can also switch, you can do more than one program in the Kansas Promise. So some will do auto body and auto tech or something, or HVAC and electrical. So it is, if you're thinking about a technical program, it's awesome. It is awesome. We do have more students applying for it. So for fall, they've already run out of money. So that would be another thing, apply as soon as you can in the spring when it opens. Okay, questions? Sorry, I went kind of long. I ad-libbed a lot. Hopefully it was helpful. And again, I'll stick around up here if anybody has questions they don't want to ask in front of everybody.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you all very much. Oh, you have a couple other handouts like this. What you can't do with financial aid, I didn't put it on here, but I like to tell kids, you can't take student loans out to go get tattoos and party at spring break.